You will not believe what just happened in the Silva household. Aniko, the eldest Silva daughter, allegedly packed her bags and fled the house overnight, leaving behind the curated chaos of her mother's reality TV empire. This wasn't a quiet college move or a simple Instagram break. In the last 48 hours, every single photo featuring Darcy on Aniko's feed vanished. Twin life hashtags? Gone. Supportive comments on surgery posts? Deleted. It's like someone hit the reset button on her digital life. But why now? What could push a daughter to erase years of family history in one click? It all ties back to an Instagram live that lasted barely a minute. The shaky camera, a dimly lit bedroom, packed suitcases in the background. Not a dorm move, but a getaway. And then the crying, not the typical reality TV sobs, but genuine panic. Something was uncovered that shouldn't have been seen. Fans and gossip channels missed it, but you don't need insider access to feel the tension. The air around that phone was electric. The moment Darcy allegedly snatched the device, it was clear. Whatever happened was bigger than anyone imagined. Now let's pause. Darcy Silva, the queen of filters, manifestations, and social media presence, is suddenly silent. No uplifting quotes, no staged selfies, no public updates about Aniko. That alone speaks volumes. Her public persona has always been about controlling the narrative, showing the perfect family, perfect transformations, and perfect reactions. But behind the camera, whispers suggest a very different story, one where family loyalty clashes with financial decisions. Timing is suspicious. Aniko is about to start college, a milestone usually celebrated with pictures, gifts, and hashtags. Yet here she is, pulling away from the spotlight, deleting evidence, and allegedly stepping out without the usual fanfare. Fans are asking the same questions. Did she discover something about the family finances? Did she see a transaction that made her question everything? And here's the twist that has everyone talking. Reports suggest the college fund, the very money meant to secure her future, might have been used elsewhere. Allegedly, a recent $30,000 cosmetic surgery for Darcy may have come straight out of Aniko's account. True, this is more than a family dispute. It's a clash between a daughter claiming her independence and a mother allegedly prioritizing vanity over responsibility. So the question hangs in the air. What did Aniko see that made her run? And how much of Darcy's carefully crafted public image is hiding a private storm? Could a $30,000 surgery really trigger a teenage daughter to vanish from her own home? The answer might shock you. Fact 1 was shocking, Act 2 is where the real storm begins. Because behind Aniko's sudden disappearance and digital wipeout lies a financial trail that leads straight to one place: Foxy Aesthetics and Darcy's latest round of high-end cosmetic procedures. Fans already know Darcy keeps up with transformations like their seasonal updates. But this time, insiders estimate the cost of the full package: lipo revision, contouring, skin tightening, and a face/neck refinement, powered by a luxury clinic that doesn't even blink before quoting $28,000 to $32,000 for a single transformation cycle. Now here's where the lines start to blur. That number, $28,000 to $32,000, matches almost perfectly with Aniko's annual college tuition and housing at her selected university. That is not coincidence. That is overlap. A dangerous overlap. The kind that leaves even fans thinking, wait, did the money meant for Aniko's education end up fueling Darcy's next big makeover? And her grandpa Mike. Quiet backbone of the Silva family. The financier. The stabilizer. The one who allegedly manages the vanity fund, a pool Darcy and Stacy access for beauty upkeep but with strict limits. The word is, Mike had already put boundaries on spending, especially after back-to-back surgeries drained more than expected. So if the vanity fund was capped, where did the extra money come from? This is where things get uncomfortable. Because according to the whispers swirling around insiders, Aniko's college account wasn't just monitored, it was accessible. A shared account. A family-managed account. And when you put financial pressure, ego, urgency, and a public figure's need to maintain her image all together, someone vulnerable pays the price. And that someone was allegedly Aniko. Think about it. Aniko wasn't just the daughter. She was emotional support, social media support, brand support, a permanent prop in the Silva Strong storyline. But now, with this alleged financial move, she became something else: collateral. Both emotional collateral, constantly carrying the stress of her mother's chaotic world, and financial collateral, whose future could be reshaped with a single unauthorized withdrawal. Imagine being 18. You log into your account expecting stability, college security, maybe even excitement about the future, and instead you see transactions you never approved. Numbers drained. Money missing. Dreams compromised. What does a teenager do in that moment? Do they confront the person responsible? Do they stay silent to protect the family image? Or do they pack their bags, hit archive on every memory, and disappear before the truth consumes them? Because if the money for her future was allegedly spent on vanity, then what happens next could tear the entire Silva image apart. The digital world noticed it before the family did. One moment, Aniko's Instagram was a neatly curated scrapbook of Silva Strong memories: red carpet photos, emotional mother-daughter selfies, glam shots, behind-the-scenes clips. And then, overnight, everything was gone. Archived. Wiped clean. As if someone took an eraser to her entire identity and said, "Start over." Social media doesn't lie. When a daughter suddenly removes years of posts connected to her mother, especially a public figure like Darcy Silva, it's not a random aesthetic cleanup. It's a message. A loud, silent, calculated message. And this is where things get even more telling. Instead of new glam updates, Aniko posted nothing. No starting college. Selfie, no smiling new chapter. Caption. Just silence. A strategic blackout. Kind that makes fans whisper, insiders panic, and PR managers lose sleep. Digital distancing is real. Psychologists say that when someone starts removing photos, muting tags, and pulling their identity away from a dominant figure, it's usually an emotional survival tactic. Especially for someone who grew up under the shadow of a reality TV brand. For years, Aniko's online identity was intertwined with Darcy's. She didn't just show up in the storyline, she was part of the storyline. A prop in family arcs, a supportive daughter in transformation journeys, a cheerleader for every glow-up. But now, she's dismantling that image piece by piece. Slowly, quietly, intentionally. People think archiving is simple, but it's symbolic. It's a declaration that says, "This chapter isn't mine anymore. I'm taking my power back. I'm preparing for something bigger." And here's where the underlying tension becomes impossible to ignore. Every move Aniko makes aligns perfectly with someone preparing to tell their own story. Someone preparing to separate from a brand. Someone who may be done being controlled by a public narrative that was never theirs. The subtle clues are everywhere: unfollow patterns, hidden tags, archived reels, a shift in tone, and the biggest sign of all, reclaiming her name without the Silva spotlight. Is this quiet distancing or preparation for a reveal? A tell-all? A truth that could break the carefully constructed Silva Strong image from the inside out? Because if you look closely, every deleted post feels less like a disappearance and more like a countdown. And if that countdown is real, the next revelation may expose secrets the Silva brand never wanted the world to see. The moment Aniko pulled away online, the silence inside the Silva circle shifted. People sensed it. Something was brewing. And then whispers about paperwork started floating around. Not emotional messages. Not a phone call asking what went wrong. Allegations surfaced about something far colder. Cease and desist letters. The kind sent by managers who want control before a story reaches the public. When those letters appear, it means someone is scared of exposure. It means someone is worried that a version of the truth might break through the polished reality identity that keeps a family brand alive. And in this case, those letters were allegedly aimed at keeping one young woman from speaking about her own life. This is where NDAs enter the picture. Many people think NDAs are iron walls, but they are sometimes more like thin curtains. An NDA is a private contract that prevents someone from sharing certain information. But most fans forget one detail. NDAs signed when a person is a minor are limited the moment they turn 18. Once they age out, their autonomy shifts. Their voice becomes their property. Their experiences belong to them. Even if a parent wants total control, the law does not always back them. So the real question becomes simple. Can a mother stop her adult daughter from telling her side of the story? Not exaggerations, not gossip. Her real experience. Her real emotional journey behind the cameras and photo shoots. That tension sits heavy between Darcy and Aniko. One side wants silence to protect a brand. The other side wants distance to protect her peace. And somewhere in the middle sits the truth that only Aniko lived. The fear in the management team is easy to read. A single leak about financial decisions could shift public sympathy. A single comment about behind-the-scenes pressure could reshape how viewers look at every staged moment. And when fans noticed that Aniko had been working on a personal writing project for months, curiosity grew even more. There is a manuscript, even a rough version, it becomes leverage. But not in a cruel way. More like protection. A safety net. Something that says, if you try to silence me, I still hold something you cannot erase. Near the Silva house, the mood feels tight. Everyone waits. Everyone watches the girl who once smiled in every family photo but now stands apart with a quiet power. And the fear grows stronger because even one small leak from that manuscript could flip the entire Silva brand upside down. The moment the title Twin Shadows started circulating among fan pages, everything shifted. The idea of a manuscript from inside the Silva bubble created a shockwave because no one expects the quiet kid in the background to be the one holding the sharpest clarity. And if this project exists, even in an early form, it could be the first time someone from inside the family tells a story without filters, cameras, or producers shaping the angle. Twin Shadows is not a revenge book. That is the part viewers misunderstand. It is more like a personal archive. A look at how a young woman grows up while reality TV swirls around her. A story about surviving a public family machine while trying to keep her sense of self intact. And that is where the danger lies for anyone who prefers the myth over the truth. 'Cause if Aniko focuses on the environment she grew up in, she does not need fictional conversations. She has public footage, episodes, social media posts, leaked production notes, verified timelines, and every detail points to a pattern viewers have suspected for years. Staged relationships with men who appear once, vanish, then return right when a plotline needs a boost. Fights that start suddenly on camera but look strangely calm off-screen. Boyfriends who seem more interested in exposure than romance, raising questions about whether they were paid participants or short-term story devices. From Aniko's position, the emotional weight is different. She was a teenager watching adults reshape their lives around ratings, filters, and sponsorship deals. She witnessed moments that felt real turn into storyline material. She saw private arguments held off until the cameras arrived. She learned the difference between raw emotion and performance emotion. Kind you switch on when a producer gives the signal. And through all of this, she was expected to smile and support the narrative. That pressure shapes a person. Constant reminder that family image comes first. Personal truth comes second. She survived that world by observing it carefully, which is why any writing from her would carry a perspective no outsider could match. Twin Shadows contains even a fraction of the experiences she hints at. It could shift how viewers judge every storyline. Not out of bitterness, but because it reveals what happens on the edges of reality TV fame. The part that never makes it into an episode. Part that explains why she needed distance to breathe. The biggest twist sits quietly beneath all of this. If she publishes her story, even a short version, the public will start asking a question the Silva family may not be ready for. What happens when the daughter who saw everything finally speaks without fear of losing the family brand? The quietest person in the Silva family often turns out to be the strongest. And in this entire situation, that person is Grandpa Mike. Viewers always saw him as the calm presence in a house full of big personalities. But behind the scenes, his role is deeper. He understands money, contracts, image management, and the emotional cost of fame. And when tension rises, he shifts into protector mode. Not for the brand. For the kids. Especially Aniko. People close to the family have noticed a shift. Mike seems to be stepping between Aniko and any pressure that tries to pull her back into the spotlight. He has the financial knowledge to see where lines were crossed. He has the emotional intelligence to read when someone is pushing too far. And most importantly, he has the authority to say no when others try to enforce silence. His support gives Aniko something she has lacked for years, the stability to make decisions based on her own future rather than the family brand. But he is not the only one whose position is changing. Stacy stands in a complicated middle space. On camera, the twins look united. Matching makeovers. Matching storylines. Matching drama arcs. But behind the curtain, competition and resentment often bubble. Stacy has her own journey, her own frustrations, and her own ideas about how the Silva image should look. And when one twin feels threatened, the other sometimes sees an opening. There are small signs that Stacy might not be fully aligned with Darcy in this moment. Her silence at key times. Her neutral tone when fans ask about the family. Her subtle support for Aniko by boosting posts that are unrelated to the Silva brand. These choices create a quiet but important shift. 'Cause when a family is built on image, even small acts of neutrality can feel like betrayal. This creates a triangle of power. Darcy wants control to keep the brand intact. Mike wants protection to keep the kids safe. Stacy wants balance but also room to stand apart when needed. And in the center stands Aniko, who now understands the weight of every decision made around her. The alliances keep shifting. The strategies keep changing. And every person in the Silva house is trying to manage their role before the public catches on to the cracks behind the glamorous exterior. But beneath all the glitter, one question grows louder. In a family built on fame, who actually holds the real power now? Growing up in a high-conflict home shapes a person in ways the outside world rarely sees. For Aniko, the pressure was never only about cameras or public attention. It was the constant balance between loyalty and truth, image and reality, support and self-preservation. Slowly, she learned to read the room faster than the adults around her. She watched how small disagreements turned into full episodes. She learned when to step back, when to stay quiet, and when to defend herself without triggering a chain reaction. That type of environment pushes a young person to develop emotional tools earlier than expected. Not because they want to, but because they have to. And you can see the results in her recent choices. Setting boundaries online. Creating distance from the brand. Turning inward instead of reacting publicly. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs of someone who learned to survive instability by choosing clarity over chaos. When kids grow up in families where conflict and attention compete for space, they often develop a strong internal compass. They learn to rely on themselves. They learn to separate what feels true from what is presented for cameras. They learn to understand when a situation is unsafe for them emotionally, even if the outside world thinks everything looks perfect in a filtered post. Aniko's steps make sense when you view them through this lens. Archiving posts gives her control over a narrative that long belonged to someone else. Stepping away from public association protects her from bearing the emotional weight of choices she never approved. Exploring her own projects helps her reclaim her voice after years of being seen as a supporting character in someone else's story. She is not lashing out. She is not rebelling without cause. She is building a life that reflects who she is, not who she was asked to be. That is what independence looks like when you grow up around tension. You stop performing. You start choosing. And as she chooses distance, the people around her feel the shift. 'Cause this time, she is not stepping back in fear. She is stepping forward with purpose. Her actions reflect the growth of someone who understands the cost of silence and the value of freedom. And all of this emotional change leads to the moment no one expected, the moment when things escalated so sharply that police intervention entered the picture and the stakes reached a new level. When a situation reaches the point where police show up, even as a civil standby, it means the tension inside that home has crossed a line. Not a dramatic TV moment, a real moment. A moment where a young woman no longer feels safe handling the exit alone. And this is exactly what sources whispered about when Aniko allegedly left the Silva house. She did not sneak out. She did not pack quietly. She left with officers present, which tells you everything about the emotional weight she carried. A civil standby is simple. Police are there to prevent conflict while someone retrieves personal belongings. They do not take sides. They do not arbitrate family issues. They stand at the door and ensure no one gets pulled into an argument or pressured into staying. The fact that Aniko requested or agreed to this step shows how much she wanted control during her departure. After years of being surrounded by intensity, she wanted a peaceful exit with witnesses, not another scene. Inside the home, the pressure had been building for months. Alleged financial decisions were questioned. Emotional boundaries were pushed. Public image collided with private stress. Leaving was not only about physical distance. It was about breaking a cycle where expectations, attention, and money all collided in ways that left her carrying more than she should have. Grandpa Mike's role on this day mattered. His calm presence, his financial understanding, and his ability to diffuse conflict gave her cover. He did not speak over her. He stayed steady. His presence signaled one clear message. This exit will not be interrupted. She will walk out with dignity, not drama. The same man who has protected the family for years shifted his focus to protecting her future instead of the brand. When the door closed behind her and she stepped into a space fully separate from the Silva world, something changed forever. This was not a teenager running away. This was a legally recognized adult making a choice about her own safety, her own stability, and her own independence. And with police confirming the smooth, conflict-free exit, it became official. The chapter ended without chaos, even if the emotional aftermath continued to shake the family. And the biggest question now hangs in the air. What happens when Aniko is not only legally independent, but also financially empowered enough to speak without fear of losing anything the family once controlled? Darcy's online presence has always been larger than life. Sparkling filters, motivational captions, glam selfies after every procedure, constant promise of transformation. For years, fans saw her as a symbol of reinvention, a woman who hustled for love, beauty, and success. But when Aniko pulled away, the contrast between the polished posts and the alleged behind-the-scenes decisions became harder to ignore. Public personas thrive on consistency. When someone presents a strong family image online and then struggles to hold that same unity privately, cracks start to show. And viewers notice everything. The missing posts, the silence between mother and daughter, the shift in energy during appearances. When the camera stops rolling, the real choices speak louder than any caption. This fracture is dangerous for a reality TV brand. 'Cause the moment fans start doubting authenticity, the entire image becomes fragile. If Aniko's manuscript reaches readers, even in a preview, the damage could spread faster than any episode release. Not because of anger, but because of honesty. Contrast between the public glow and the private pressure would be impossible to brush off. Reality TV fame depends on storylines. And when a family member steps away with her own story, the audience starts asking hard questions. How much of the show was shaped for ratings? How much of the conflict was sparked for attention? How much emotional strain fell on the kids while the adults chased spotlight moments? Fame can twist relationships into performances where affection turns into content and personal boundaries blur into plot points. That distortion becomes clearer when you look at how each family member reacts now. Darcy pushes to protect her image. Fans see her posting more, smiling harder, promoting new looks. But that effort has a shadow behind it. 'Cause when viewers know someone in the family walked away under pressure, every new post feels like damage control. The risk is not only emotional, it is financial. Brands that once collaborated for her glam days will hesitate if the family image looks unstable. Audience trust drives engagement. Engagement drives partnerships. One honest story from Aniko could change that balance. And as the audience watches, another strange detail starts to emerge. Georgie's online activity hints at a quiet shift, a subtle sign that someone once close to Darcy might be aligning with the person who walked away. Which raises a sharp question. If Georgie steps into this picture, does Aniko gain an insider with receipts that Darcy never expected to face? When viewers noticed Georgie liking certain posts and staying unusually neutral toward Darcy, the conversation shifted again. People started asking why someone once tied so closely to her would stay quiet during a family crisis. And the more fans watched, the clearer it looked. His silence was not random. It was strategic. Kind that comes from someone who has seen the inner workings of a household and now prefers distance from the drama. Possible alliance with Aniko does not mean secret meetings or dramatic confrontations. Can be something as simple as shared understanding. Georgie lived inside the brand long enough to recognize repeated patterns. He saw how storylines were shaped. He saw how conflicts were timed. He saw how pressure flowed through the family whenever cameras were near. When someone has witnessed those details, their knowledge becomes powerful, even without speaking publicly. Insiders hold the strongest type of evidence. Not gossip. Not speculation. The small, verifiable things that line up with production schedules, financial timelines, and public posts. Screenshots. Dates. Observations. Consistency. When those details match a pattern described by someone like Aniko, they strengthen her credibility. They give her story teeth. They make it harder for anyone to dismiss her as emotional or confused. Legal battles are not always about loud accusations. They often turn on quiet proof. Connections between money movement and personal decisions. Differences between what was promoted online and what happened in private. Statements that were recorded because cameras were present. Georgie understands how to connect those dots, even if he never speaks publicly. And that alone shifts the balance. Narrative power changes the moment more than one person is willing to confirm the same truth. Gives Aniko room to stand on her own without fear of being painted as dramatic. Positions her as someone with lived experience supported by people who saw the same patterns. And when a brand relies on illusion, that kind of support becomes dangerous to those protecting the facade. The Silva storyline was built on transformation, loyalty, and family strength. But behind that image sits a different reality. One where financial strain, emotional pressure, and controlled narratives shaped daily life. If Aniko steps forward with a clear, supported story, the question becomes whether the public will continue believing the curated persona or follow the evidence. Tension now rests on a single point. One daughter with distance. One ex with insight. One family brand under pressure. And everything leads to the final question. In a house built on illusions, does the truth finally rise or does the image tighten its grip one last time? By the time Aniko steps into her own life, financially separate, emotionally grounded, and legally empowered, the entire dynamic of the Silva household shifts. What once looked like a family operating under a single dominant voice now feels like a set of individual paths branching in completely different directions. Her decision to assert independence is not just a personal milestone, it becomes a catalyst. Quiet signal that cycles can end, patterns can break, and a new identity can be built without inherited pressure. Her journey shows how agency doesn't arrive all at once. It builds slowly, through understanding boundaries, recognizing patterns, and having the courage to say, "This isn't working for me anymore." And when someone raised inside a highly public family brand chooses autonomy, it forces everyone around them to confront their own behavior. not through accusations but through contrast. Through the example of someone walking away and finding clarity. Emotionally, the impact spreads in all directions. Darcy is left contending with the gap between the persona she presents online and the reactions of those closest to her. Spin observes the ripple effects, trying to stay neutral while navigating a house where narratives often shift with every new conflict. Grandpa Mike's role deepens. He becomes the stabilizing figure who guided his granddaughter toward a healthier foundation, proving that calm support can dismantle noise more effectively than confrontation. Legally, the stakes rise. Aniko's independence brings smoother access to resources, advice, and choices that were previously filtered through family dynamics. If a manuscript exists, one filled with experiences, inconsistencies, or evidence, it becomes more than storytelling. It becomes documentation. And documentation carries weight in both courtrooms and public opinion. But the biggest shift is behavioral. Once one person breaks from the pattern, others may follow. Or resist. And that resistance often reveals more truth than any statement ever could. So the audience is left with questions that hit deeper than celebrity drama. When families build brands, do they lose sight of each other? Does fame create pressure that justifies harmful behavior? And at what point does silence become complicity? As this chapter closes, the story is far from over. New paperwork may surface. A manuscript could drop. A reality TV fallout might reshape alliances again. And in the next video, we'll break down exactly what the first signs of that fallout look like, and who may be stepping into the spotlight next.